I started tattooing people besides myself in, I'd say, like around 2 years ago, roughly. Maybe a little more, but it was pretty inconsistent. I got into tattooing while at North Central, actually. I didn't necessarily think I was ever going to be one. I just drew. And then one of my friends came into my room and they heard I could draw. So they asked me to design a half sleeve for him. So I did. And then he just texted around to a bunch of people like at and not at North Central. And so I had like all this design work to do in the next like month and a half because people were so stoked. And basically I just was like, I should do this. So the summer came and I bought some really crappy equipment and I practiced on grapefruits all summer. And then I asked my mentor, who like did my whole right arm, for just his tips and stuff. So basically it was just, I found that I kind of had a knack for designing stuff and I really got a good outlet out of it. And yeah, I've always kind of created things. And so just the fact that it tied into how much I loved being tattooed, then just doing it was just kind of like a natural happening, really. I fell into tattooing, honestly.
3 years ago, when I got my tattoo, it was really just for the looks of it. I knew a lot of people who were getting tattoos, a lot of people who had tattoos, and it was kind of a spur of the moment thing. I really liked it, but I got a lot of advice saying, you're going to have this forever. You should really think about it. And so when I sat down and thought about it, it was a big decision. So my tattoo is from The Lord of the Rings. It's in Tengwar cursive, an Elvish script, and it says, all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. It's my favorite Gandalf quote, my favorite Tolkien quote, and it took me a while to find it, but I really rested on that quote to be on my body for the rest of my life because it reminds me that this is the time that God has given us, and we do get to decide what we do with it, and we can't waste it. Time is precious. Our life is precious. It's a gift, and we shouldn't waste it. We should do everything that we can with it.
I got my first tattoo when I was 18 because I wanted to be that rebellious teenager. And my first one was actually this tiny little cross back here. I don't know why I thought that a cross would be rebellious, but I did it anyways. And so I started out doing that, and then I really just started liking them, and my brother was super into it because he's a tattoo artist. And then I realized that you can tell a lot of your story with tattoos, and like I'm not good with words at all, with like even like telling my testimony or talking about the Lord to anybody. So realizing that I could do them like in ink on my body just seems super cool to me, and it's just each of them is like a different piece of my testimony just on my arm. So this one is definitely my favorite tattoo because my brother designed it and did it for me, and I kind of just gave him a meaning that meant a lot to me and just like my story in my life, and I just gave him the meaning and he was able to draw it up, and then I got it the next day.
All right, so this is my art studio. This is where I do most of my things. I mainly oil paint. That's where most of my efforts go anymore. So this is what I'm currently working on right here. This little, if anyone's seen the movie Hellboy, this is Abe Sapien from that movie. I have a finished Hellboy over here that I'm waiting to varnish right now. Yeah, so this is where I just come in here to paint. I host regular art nights out of here too, so I get more people to like feed off of creative energy and whatnot. So some of the stuff on the wall is mine, some is other people's. Like this is a self-portrait of my friend Travis from Beloved Studios, and it looks great. You don't know what he looks like, but it's a really awesome portrait. Stuff like that. But yeah, I adore that I have this room. I think for the most part, there isn't even a ton of argument out there as far as like people, like scholars that actually have much merit in exegesis and whatnot when it comes to tattooing being a sin or not. The one main thing being the new covenant and basically fulfilling the old law, and those old practices are no longer a thing that we adhere to. Basically, if you believe in like Jesus Christ and his crucifixion, essentially it's pretty hard with actual Bible study for you to think that tattooing is a sin. Because in that same exact paragraph, it's either the line before, the line after, it says, men do not shave your beards. And it's in the same exact context, so it's the same level of sin. So the Jewish people who adhere to the Old Testament, like if you're that and you believe those practices, then yes, tattooing would be. But for Christianity, I think it's pretty hard for you to say that it's a sin.
I've heard a lot of the arguments against tattoos, especially, the rules in the Old Testament, a lot of what people have said about what the Bible has to say about it. And I actually totally understand it and I see it. But actually, I disagree, and I think that it's totally okay to have tattoos. I think it's a great way to express yourself. It can be a great ministry, and it's really cool to have art on your body. I'm a musician, so art is kind of my life and how I express my worship, and it's a great way to show the artistry that God gives us on your body. However, I do believe that the body is a temple, and that God gave it to us for us to respect. And so with the body as a gift, we do have to respect our skin and be careful of the images or what we say on our bodies, because we're not only showing that to other people, but that does reflect back on ourselves. So I don't have a problem with tattoos. I would just, if anybody's thinking about getting one, I would say to really think about it beforehand and have some time in prayer about it.
It's not an underground thing anymore. It used to be counterculture, now it's consumer culture. You turn 18, you get a tattoo. You turn 21, you can buy a drink or something like that. So it's just part of a regular thing. There are tattoo shops in malls, and I think that it's just a great way to share who you are. I don't know. It's as cheesy as it can be. It's you really expressing yourself in like the most kind of outer way you can at like all the points, and it takes so much commitment. There's a financial commitment because tattoos aren't cheap. It's on you forever, so that's there. It hurts to get them, so if you're putting yourself through that, it typically means something. So I think that they're a powerful tool. People ask me all this time because the stuff on my arms and whatnot, they're like straight up stories that I've done to even make myself have to talk about things. So I think they're useful, and they're just like anything else. It's a tool. They're not inherently evil or good. Music isn't inherently evil or good. Religion isn't inherently evil or good. It's all how you use it.
Before I started getting tattoos, I thought they were a little weird because that was forever ago, and my brother, I always thought he was kind of a nerd. And so when he started getting them, I was a little kind of like standoffish to him or whatever, but then I noticed like how much his meant to him and like the different stories behind all of them, and then I noticed that was super cool. So then I started getting into them even before I loved the Lord and now after. But I think Christians with tattoos are a great idea because as long as you're glorifying the Lord with what you're doing, I think you need to do what you're passionate about and what you love. And if what you love is tattoos and stories like that, I think if it glorifies the Lord, then why not do it? And I know like with myself and my brother, all of my tattoos are going to point back to Jesus. Every time someone asks me about like, oh, what does this tattoo mean? I'm able to be like, it means this because the Lord did this in my life. And I think that's super cool that like, if you look at me, you probably wouldn't assume I'm the most Christian person in the world, which is fine. But like even just meeting people on the street, they'll be like, hey, what does that tattoo mean? And I'll be like, this just is explaining, what the Lord brought me through in my life and, how he's redeemed me and stuff. And that's just super cool to then just be real with those people. And they're like, oh, like, and just opens up so many doors to like have conversations and stuff like that. So I think as long as you're glorifying the Lord through your tattoos, even if they're not religious at all, as long as, you're glorifying the Lord in what you're doing, I think it's incredible if people love them.